Have you ever noticed how uncomfortable it is to do nothing?
Hi, I'm Irene. Welcome to Beyond Survival. This is a space where we slow down and learn how to feel safe in our own lives again.
Not scrolling, not answering emails, not planning, not optimizing, not even improving yourself. Just sitting alone with your thoughts. For many people, that's surprisingly difficult. In fact, some people find it unbearable. They can spend 8 hours working without a problem, but 10 minutes sitting quietly, that feels impossible. And for a long time, I thought this was discipline. I thought it meant I was ambitious, driven, successful, motivated. But eventually, I started asking a different question. Why was it so hard to stop? Because those are not the same thing. Loving your work is one thing. Feeling unable to stop is something else entirely. And the more I looked around, the more I noticed something. Some of the most productive people I knew seemed exhausted. Not physically, existentially. As if they were carrying something much heavier than their schedules. And that's when I began to wonder, what if some of us aren't addicted to productivity? What if we are addicted to what productivity helps us avoid? Think about the messages most of us received growing up. What got rewarded? Good grades, achievements, winning, being responsible, being impressive. Nobody sat us down and said, I'm proud of how deeply connected you are to yourself. Or, I'm proud of how present you are. I'm proud of how peacefully you exist. We don't hear that, right? Instead, many of us learned a very different lesson. We learned that performance gets attention. Performance gets praise. Performance gets approval. And slowly, without realizing it, we started connecting achievement with worth. Not consciously, subconsciously. A child gets an A, people celebrate. A child wins a competition, people celebrate. A child excels, people celebrate. And the child's nervous system begins learning, when I achieve, I matter. When I perform, I am seen. When I succeed, I am valued. Again, achievement itself isn't the problem. Achievement can be beautiful. The problem begins when achievement stops being something you do and becomes who you are. At first, this strategy works. You become successful, you become reliable, you become accomplished. People admire you. You admire yourself. Life moves forward. But eventually, something changes. You stop working toward goals. You start working to maintain an identity. Now you're not just finishing a project. You're protecting the image of being competent. You're protecting the image of being successful. You're protecting the image of being productive. And suddenly, rest feels different. Rest doesn't feel like recovery. it feels like losing momentum. It feels like falling behind. It feels like becoming less valuable. That's why some people feel guilty on vacation. Have you noticed that? They finally get some time off, the thing they've been waiting for. And yet, they can't relax. Their body is on the beach, but their mind is still at work. Thinking, planning, preparing. Because the problem was never a lack of free time. The problem was that they no longer knew who they were without being productive. Most addictions are obvious: alcohol, shopping, gambling, social media. But there's another addiction that often gets rewarded instead of questioned: the addiction to staying busy, the addiction to constant doing, the addiction to never slowing down. And the reason it's dangerous is because society applauds it. People admire busy people. People admire exhausted people. People admire people who are constantly moving. If you tell someone, "I worked all weekend," many people will respect you. But if you tell someone, "I spend the weekend resting, reflecting, and doing nothing," the response feels very different. One sounds productive, the other sounds lazy. At least according to the stories many of us have absorbed. So we keep going, not because we need to, because stopping feels uncomfortable. This is where things get interesting. Imagine that all your tasks disappeared for a week. No meetings, no deadlines, no projects, no goals, nothing to accomplish. What would happen? Most people imagine they would feel relieved. And at first, they probably would. But eventually, something else starts showing up: thoughts, emotions, questions. The things you've been too busy to notice. Maybe loneliness, maybe grief, maybe uncertainty, maybe a quiet feeling that you've been disconnected from yourself for years. This is why stillness can feel uncomfortable, because stillness reveals things. Busyness distracts us from them. The work was never just work. Sometimes it was an escape route, a socially acceptable way of avoiding ourselves. I've met people who achieved extraordinary things. People who built successful businesses. People who reached financial freedom. People who accomplished goals they spent decades chasing. And many of them eventually arrive at the same question: why doesn't this feel the way I thought it would? Because they believed achievement would create something it was never designed to create. They thought it would create enoughness. They thought it would create peace. They thought it would create self-worth. But achievement cannot do that. Achievement can improve your circumstances, but it cannot define your identity. No promotion can tell you who you are. No award can tell you who you are. No amount of recognition can tell you who you are. Those are questions only you can answer. And the longer we avoid those questions, the louder they become. The cost of this addiction isn't just exhaustion, it's disconnection. You become disconnected from your emotions, disconnected from your relationships, disconnected from the present moment, disconnected from yourself. Have you ever been with your family but mentally you're somewhere else? Thinking about tomorrow, thinking about work, thinking about what's next. Your body was there, but you were not. Productivity can steal something very valuable: your attention. And wherever your attention goes, that's where your life goes. If your attention is always in the future, you miss the life that's happening right now. So, what's the answer? It's not becoming lazy. It's not abandoning ambition. It's not quitting your job and moving to Bali. The answer isn't less achievement. The answer is changing your relationship with achievement. Achievement becomes healthier when it stops being your source of worth, when it becomes an expression of who you are instead of proof that you're enough. Because you were enough before the goal, before the promotion, before the success, before the recognition. The goal didn't create your value, it revealed your effort. There's a difference. And maybe that's what coming home really means. Not giving up on growth, but remembering that your worth was never supposed to depend on your productivity. Maybe the reason you're exhausted isn't because you're doing too much. Maybe you're exhausted because you've spent years trying to earn something that was never missing. Your worth, your value, your right to exist exactly as you are. And maybe freedom isn't having nothing to do, it's being able to sit quietly with yourself without feeling like you should be somewhere else, without feeling like you should be accomplishing something, without feeling like you have to earn your place in the world. If this resonated with you, leave a comment. I'm more than what I produce. Because sometimes the journey home begins the moment we stop measuring our value by our output and start remembering who we are without it.